The New York Jets have found another new way to lose in this challenging 2024 season. Welcome into the Flight Plan Podcast. I'm Tim McMaster along with Zack Rosenblatt. We have our frequent flyer miles covered this week, Zack. You just got back to New Jersey this morning from Miami, where you watched what ended up being a depressing football game. I'm in Dallas right now for baseball's winter meetings. I got up it's Central Time here in Dallas, so I got up at 2:30 Central Time in New York to catch a 6 a.m. flight. I am dragging, and I'm sure you are too, but we are going to power through here.
Let's see how you do with the button. Let's see if you click the right buttons when you're this tired.
No chance, especially because I'm in a new place with different stuff. I know
you got
we're lucky that we're
external factors
right now. Yeah. Although I have I don't know if you see, there's a go this way. If you're watching on YouTube, Christmas tree behind me. We're at the Anatole Hotel in Dallas, which is all these winter meetings hotels are always huge. There's this one, which has like 3 atriums and like 7 restaurants.
It's like NFL owners meetings is always like that.
Yeah. The one in Nashville though is none other. There's a river running through the Gaylord Opryland in Nashville.
Oh, cool.
The best one of these is San Diego because it's not a giant hotel. It's just like a big hotel, but it has like one lobby bar where the entire baseball world hangs out. If like a deal happens late at night, you hear this like buzz rise up.
So we should peel back real quick. A little baseball talk. How did everybody react last night?
I was going to say, I got here this morning, so it's still chatter.
But
right. If you are listening or watching the show and you're a Jets fan, hopefully you're also a Mets fan and not a Yankee fan. If you are a Yankee fan, apologies, but hopefully you're a Mets fan because at least then you have the Juan Soto era to look forward to. Unbelievable. 15 years. We're just do baseball talk instead of the Jets. 15 years, $765 million. It could be $800 million if they opt in to the extended part of the deal.
Which is crazy. Escalators to get it to $800 million is like a crazy statement. But Rich Cimini tweeted it. The Jets were bought by Woody Johnson for, I think, $635 million in 2000. I mean, obviously they'd be worth like $7 billion right now, but just like all the relativity, like how much money he's going to get on that contract is like more than LeBron James has made in his NBA career, like things like that. It's just like,
and bonkers. I mean, it's not the biggest contract annual value. That's Messi,
which is the part people are forgetting
about. $150 million a year or something like that, but it's the biggest total package.
Totally.
And like honestly, like does Steve Cohen even like? It's just like,
It's nothing. It's dropping the butt. Well, as I was texting with somebody, I was texting with somebody. They were like, at that point, if you're the Yankees, like just pay more. Like when you're getting into the $700 million, then what does like $20 million? What kind of difference is that?
You think they maybe got to the point though where it was just like no matter what we do, Cohen is gonna like just does. It's just he's playing a different game than every other owner in baseball. When you look at like value, like what he's worth compared to and. All of these owners are ridiculously wealthy, right? They're all billionaires, but there's like, as sad as this is to say, there's like a billionaire, and then there's like Cohen billions, right?
Yeah, it's like that's like the Mark Cuban level of wealth. Yeah,
it's crazy. All right, should we talk about the Jets?
I should I normally would make fun of the Mets because let's just say I grew up as a fan.
We can't make fun of the Mets anymore.
I know, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it works out. Okay,
we will see how it works out.
Speaking of things always working out, let's talk about the New York Jets.
Although the Mets were close to a World Series a year ago, the Jets now officially 14 years without a playoff appearance, longest stretch in all of sports. So this is our 4 downs episode. So let's get right into the 4 downs of Sunday's loss, 32-26 to the Dolphins, a game that it felt like the Jets had in hand throughout and then let it slip away at the end. But we're actually going to start with the positive on this episode, Zach. Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams gave us a glimpse, and maybe it's not positive because of where they are, but like we got this glimpse of what could have been with those two guys, right? Wilson, 7 catches, $114, Adams 9 for 109 and a touchdown. And what Wilson was doing against Jalen Ramsey, I mean, just give him the money.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it's kind of a little depressing because this felt like the first game where we really got to see like at their best what this could look like, and there was still stuff left on the field. Like they didn't get to 30 points, which Rodgers alluded to. You need and if they got 30 points, they probably win this game. But my point being, like, Rodgers missed Garrett a few times. Like, there was the play down the sideline where I know we said we're going to be positive. I'm already being negative. But got a 42-yard gain down the sideline. Garrett got behind Jalen Ramsey. It was wide open, but Rodgers angled it like a little bit too much to the sideline. So what could have been like a 68-yard touchdown instead was a 42-yard reception. And there's another one that's kind of gone on Twitter. People have noticed where Garrett was open in the – I can't remember what the situation was, but he was wide open in the middle of the field. And he like threw his hands up. Rodgers didn't see him because he decided pre-snap he was going to Devontae. He didn't throw it to him, and Garrett like jumped up like, "Give me the ball!" Like the frustration is very palpable with him. But yeah, I mean, those they're two of the, if not top 10 receivers, two of the like 15 best receivers in the NFL. Garrett can just do amazing things. He was doing a lot of stuff after the catch. He was getting open again against one of the NFL's best corners maybe ever. And Jalen Ramsey was still very good. I think I saw there was a stat on Next Gen that I think he had 97 yards against Jalen Ramsey, which is the most anyone's had against him in coverage since like 2017 or something like that.
That's nuts.
But yeah, I mean, that ultimately, and this was a big. I can't remember what we put at second down. I can't remember.
We're gonna stick with this kind of it because we're gonna flow into Wilson's post game.
Yeah,
so
if
you want to do that natural transition, okay.
No, I'll talk Adams a little first because we've talked about this a little bit. So I won't keep repeating it every week, but and we talked about it with Will Parkinson quite a bit, actually. But I do think that the next GM should try to figure out a way of keeping him here. I get the sense it's not going to be possible if and when Aaron Rodgers leaves. I think Devontae either wants to go where Aaron goes or he wants to go where a quarterback situation isn't so up in the air. But like him and Garrett together.
Is Aaron going somewhere, though?
Maybe. I mean, if he keeps playing like he did this last game, maybe somebody will.
He did play, yeah.
He played a lot better. Even if he missed stuff, he still was way, way better and good enough to win with kind of thing. But, I think Devontae and Garrett, it's a great duo. But then if you remove Devontae from that group, all of a sudden you have Garrett as a number one. You're getting rid of Allen Lazard. Who else do you have? Malachi Corley was a healthy scratch in week 14 of a lost season. Like, what are we doing? Like, I could not believe it.
That's a great point. Like, why? Yeah. Why? Like, why are you playing Lazard? Who, by the way, got another penalty for just moving forward at the snap.
Yeah. Like, look, if maybe the coaches don't like Malachi Corley, or maybe he doesn't practice well or something. Maybe they don't like his attitude. I don't know. But at this point, and Ulbrich is not going to be the head coach next year, so maybe in his head he's like, why do I have to, play these guys that don't affect me? I'm trying to win. But give this guy some reps, see what he can do. They just have not done that, or like manufacture some touches for him. Whoever they hire next, coaching-wise, offensive coordinator-wise, whatever it is, I'm not personally of the mind that you have to hire an offensive head coach, but you need a great offensive coordinator if you don't. I just, for love of God, hope they find an offensive coordinator who's more creative than the guys they've used lately. I mean, Todd Downing's been better than what Hackett was, and LaFleur is better than both of them. But it's just like...
It's crazy that you just said LaFleur is better than both of them.
I know. I think he's aged very well. He really has. Because he was, like, I know it feels like so long ago, and I feel like we maybe forget how, like, bad it looks sometimes, some decisions he made and players he wasn't playing and stuff like that. But when this Jets offense was at its best when Mike White was the quarterback, not Aaron Rodgers, not Zack Wilson.
Mike effing White.
Well, that and Chris Trevler was at its best. So, but anyway, so the receiver room has a lot of questions going forward, and that kind of gets into our second down.
All right, second down. Yes, after the game, Garrett Wilson seemed like we talked about last week, Aaron Rodgers biting his tongue, and it felt like after the game, maybe it was Garrett's turn to just start showing. And he always shares his feelings to a degree, but like it really seemed like the frustration came through.
I mean, he's ultimately, I say this often, he's like elite when it comes to the post. Like he's such a good post game player for us.
Elite post game player.
I mean, he's an elite player too, to be fair. But I asked, my opening question to him was basically like, look, how do you fathom losing this way this many times? Like they've lost 3 times in a row when they had a lead in the fourth quarter, and they've lost 5 times this season when they had leads in the fourth quarter, which is a team record. And I'm like, how do you fathom that? Especially like this is a different kind of losing. It's not like, I know you've dealt with a lot the last couple of years, but this is a different kind. And he's like, losing always stinks. And then he and this is the lead of my story. He like stretches his neck out and then like stretches it a little bit. I'm like, okay, here we go. Literally in my head, I'm like,
he's warming up.
He's either about to say nothing or because sometimes guys will get all fidgety when they're getting uncomfortable because they want to say what they mean and they can't. But that was the opposite. It was him like releasing the tension is how I described it. Because then he just said like it's as if basically what he said is it's as if we expect everything to go wrong and so it does. Like it's like a gene, which is not something I've ever heard anybody say out loud. But I think people who follow the Jets have always felt that like it's an inevitability, like the same old Jets thing. As much as fans hate hearing it, it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's what's happened. Like the way the Jets have lost this season is unlike anything I've seen. It's like over and over and over again where they should win and they do 5 things wrong and it's over and they lost, and you can always feel it coming too. Like it's it's like an Aaron Rodgers pick 6 or like whatever. Like there's just a moment where something happens and you're like, oh boy, here we go again. And it just does. And it's just like these little things. And that's kind of what Garrett was alluding to. And that wasn't his only, like he had so many quotes that were just like so on the money to the point where I wonder if he's actually a part of Jets Twitter because he just gets it, because he, like on a secret account, like not even on his account. Maybe he has a burner that he's just engaging with Jets Twitter, because he had a quote about like, so somebody asked like, how shocking is it that you guys are 3-10 and you missed the playoffs? He's like, if you had asked me that in training camp, when we were having all these great practices against these other teams and everything was looking good and we were all excited, sure, I would have been shocked, but I'm not shocked now. He's like, what I've learned is that, we have to win when the regular season starts. Winning in the offseason doesn't matter. Winning in training camp doesn't matter. Like that's like the quintessential Jets like thing. It's they win the offseason every year and then they don't win in the regular season. So Garrett Wilson just gets it. And the crux of my story, I kind of alluded to this in our big story in January. I think it got buried in there because there's so much other stuff. But like the idea that Garrett Wilson has told people, and I'm not the only one who's either reported this or alluded to it. I believe Connor Hughes has too, in addition to maybe some others. But that he's either told people or people have wondered in the building, and both are true, whether if things kept going the way they were. And this was what I was told last year. Like Garrett Wilson was telling people that if things kept going the way they were, where he feels like he's not being put in position to succeed in this team, whether it's because of the offensive coordinator or quarterback, like he doesn't see himself staying with the Jets long term. And so we get to this year, he finally has a quarterback, the best one he's ever played with in the NFL, at the very least, best one he's ever played with, and he's getting the ball, but he's being left open a lot of times. They're losing constantly. He's still not getting put in position to succeed. Nathaniel Hackett, like I heard the first 5 weeks, he was ready to explode about Hackett, and then ironically, that's when Saleh was demoting him anyway. But like he just like time after time, the Jets have, kind of ruined this kid's, like not ruined it, but they've like, I don't know, wasted, I guess is the better word. They've wasted his prime. Like he's 3 years in. He's going to have 3 straight years with 1,000 yards and over 80 catches. One of only 5 guys to ever do that, I believe. Michael Thomas, Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham, and Justin Jefferson, like really good group. He's one of only 5 guys to ever do that. Not just like, the modern times or anything. I know it's a passing league now and all that. The Jets are not a passing team. They've had bad quarterbacks, which makes his more impressive than theirs, in my opinion. And you just, I think we've seen flashes of what could happen when he has a quarterback who can get him the ball. But Aaron is also like pre-deciding where he's going a lot of the time. Anyway, my point being like, I'm not saying Garrett Wilson is not going to be a Jet next year. Like money talks. If you offer him $30 to $35 million a year, he's going to have a hard time turning that down. And
but you almost have to do it this off season, right? Because if you wait till he's 1 year away from free agency, you're not going to sign him. And I feel like
not only that, but you saw a lot of guys, receivers especially, have started to hold out when they don't get the money they want. Some ask for trades, but usually they just hold out. And even ones that ask for trades, sometimes they don't wind up getting traded. They wind up signing a new deal. Jamar Chase was holding out for a while. I think Deebo Samuel there at one point, it was like they thought, Brandon Ayuk wanted to get traded, and then they signed him. Like
Chase was holding in, right?
He was holding in. I imagine Garrett probably wants to see what the future looks like, who the quarterback is, who the coach is in particular. who the offensive coordinator is, the wide receivers coach, all that stuff. But I think as we sit here right now, like, I don't know that he wants to be a Jet long term, and I don't frankly blame him. But as I wrote in there, like, whoever they hire, the next GM, the next head coach, make him your number one priority. Like, legitimately, like, get him in your office, be like, what are you looking? I'm not saying let him dictate anything, but like, sit him down. Like, what are the plays you like? What are the plays you like running? What are the kind of quarterbacks you like? Like, what can we do to make you happy? What's happened in the last 3 years that has annoyed you the most? And tell him, like, here's your contract extension. You're the highest paid receiver. You're the number 3 highest paid receiver in the NFL, like, whatever it is. Give him the money, lock in this sort of star who I think is good for their culture, and just go forward. I think you can have conversations about the rest of that 2022 class, but I think Garrett, do what you can to make him happy. Don't go overboard, obviously, but like, he should be the number one priority of the next GM, because when the next GM comes in, like, free agency's not going to have started yet or anything like that. Quarterback's the number one priority ultimately, but I think making Garrett happy enough that you don't have to worry every second that he's going to ask for a trade, I think, is going to be huge.
Because he could be such an asset positively. Yeah. He's there instead of the negative. All right. So many guys out. Breece Hall didn't play. Sauce Gardner didn't play. Tyron Smith's done for the year. So let's check in on the backups. Olu, very good again at left tackle. That is super encouraging going into next year. And we've said, like, what that maybe means for, like, the coaching search and the GM search, just having that, like, pillar there, it seems like. And then the running backs, Braylon Allen, 11 carries, 41 yards on the ground, 4 catches for 38. And then Isaiah Davis showed a little bit again. And then finally, Brendan Eccles. Just kind of like thoughts on those guys that were filling in for all these injuries and a chance to kind of show themselves here.
Yeah, Olu, he didn't have as good of a game. I think he gave up 4 pressures, and including, I think, the sack in the fourth quarter. That kind of, they get into the I can't even remember. I'm tired. They get into the Dolphins part
of fourth down.
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah. They get, well, I'm just talking about this specifically. They get to the Dolphins part of the field, have a run that loses yards, and then they get sacked. Olu gave up the sack, but otherwise he was really solid. And I think they have a stud at left tackle. Like, I really do. Like, I think he's going to be a part of this young core that we're talking about when you talk about Sauce, Garrett, Breece, Quinton Williams. Like, he's a part of that group, I think. Braylon and Isaiah, I really was curious to see how they looked, and I was impressed. Isaiah in particular, I think he's kind of come up recently in a way that I didn't expect. And, it's led to a lot of conversation about what they should do at running back. There's been a lot of chatter on Twitter and even in like the comment section of my stories about, like, whether the Jets should get rid of, not whether, it's a lot of people saying they should trade Breece Hall this offseason. I think it's gone a step too far. I'm not saying they shouldn't be open to it, because whatever new GM comes in, he should be able to do whatever he wants. And if you can get a really good value for a running back in a contract year, like, sure, go do it. But I think people are, like, undervaluing what Breece brings to the table. And I actually love the idea of an old school 3-headed monster. Like, maybe we've learned this year that Breece can't be a bell cow. Like, maybe that's like a reality, because he's not someone who's getting, like, in between the tackles, the short yards. He's someone who's trying to score on every play, and he's really explosive, and he can do that, and he's a weapon in the passing game. But I think if you work in Braylon Allen in particular, but both Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, if you work in all 3 of them, I think of the Eagles in 2017, and I think this trio, with Breece at the top, is more talented, but when they went to the Super Bowl, the Eagles traded for Jay Ajayi. He was really good. He was before he tore his ACL and kind of fell off. They had LeGarrette Blount and they had Corey Clement, like 3 guys that were really solid and complemented each other really well. And I think the Jets should be trying to do that, because weirdly the NFL has gone back towards running backs having value and teams who run the ball, like, being the best in the league. Like, teams that lean on the run, like, establish the run, the Eagles, the Ravens, like, there's all these teams that are
Steelers
that have prioritized running the ball. And so I lean on keeping Breece Hall. And even if you look at his numbers, last year he was coming off the torn ACL and he still ran for almost 1,700 total yards. I was just looking this up. There's only 9 running backs in team history that have had 2 seasons of 1,000 or more yards from scrimmage. And a guy in the 70s, John Riggins, is the only other one that did it as young as Breece has done it at 22 and 23. So I think that people have undervalued what he brings to the table, and I get it, because this is a lost season, and he hasn't been great. Like, there's definitely been weeks where he's been unimpactful. I think the run blocking has been inconsistent, but I keep him. I pair him with Isaiah Davis, who is better than I thought. Pair him with Braylon Allen, who I'm high on his potential, and you go forward. I know that was a little sidetrack, but I just wanted to get that off my chest. And then the other one you mentioned was Brandon Echols. I mean, he's not a guy that ideally you play for 17 games as your starter, but he had some moments yesterday. I think he got targeted quite a bit, maybe trying to avoid DJ Reed a little. But Tyreek Hill is going to beat you no matter who you are a little bit. I thought he was pretty solid, and he's been a pretty solid filling guy. Amazingly, the Jets have 2 interceptions this season, and they're both Brandon Echols when he subbed in when other guys were hurt. But he's going to be a free agent, so I'm curious to see what they do there because you're losing DJ Reed. I wonder how much you can. I mean, drafting a corner, there's some value in that because it's a valuable position and you get it on a rookie deal. But would you bring back Brandon Echols if you're not sure what you have in Quantez Stiggers? I'd consider it if it's a reasonable 1-year contract kind of thing. So that's another one to keep an eye on in terms of free agents.
All right, 4th down, end of the game. So frustrating. You mentioned it. They're in field goal range. They're close. If they do things right, you can run the clock. Right, you see teams do this all the time. Able to run the clock out, kick the field goal with either no time left or very little time left. But the way it plays out for the Jets, they lose ground on a run. Rodgers takes a sack, which forces them to throw the ball to get back into it to field goal range. And they end up leaving 41 seconds for the Dolphins, something like that. And then instead of kicking the ball away into the end zone and just letting the Dolphins start from the 30, they're able to return it to the 45, barely have to go anywhere. They get 20 yards. They kick the field goal to tie it. And then there's this history in overtime. It's just it's these little things, right? Every week it's a different little thing. This is the first time we saw this one to cost this team a game.
Yeah, it's it's details. I don't know if that's coaching or players losing focus or it's the self-fulfilling prophecy of it's all going to fall apart. But like I said earlier, it's just crazy. If you look back at the season, there's so many games where they did like 3 or 4 things, like very dumb or, unconscionable things or mistakes they made in key moments where it cost them the game. And ultimately, I think it is coaching because I do think this team has talent and good teams don't consistently lose this way. They would lose this way with solid too. The difference was, I feel like we kind of forget this now, is usually, not counting this year, like the last, like 2022 and 23, the Jets were usually coming back from a deficit. They were not usually the team that had the lead. That was usually the case. They had to grind out a low scoring game, things like that. They didn't have a lot of games where they went into the fourth quarter with a lead, and they have not been able to handle that. And that's ultimately on coaching. I don't know if it's conditioning. I don't know what it is, but to make the mistakes that the Devontae Adams one staying in bounds, I think Aaron Rodgers audibled at the line of scrimmage to that play. Why are you calling a route to the outside when you want to kill time? The idea is you need to stay inside. You need to kill the clock. And he throws it to him, and I think there's legitimate question about whether the officials didn't call the play dead soon enough because of forward progress. I think that Devontae alluded to that, but ultimately, that's a misfire. And then on the kickoff, Anders Carlson is supposed to kick it out of the end zone. He doesn't. He kicks it to the 1, and they have a great return. And then quickly they go up the field. And then by then you're like, all right, well, if the Dolphins get the ball in overtime, it's over. And
it was
what
quick.
Happened. It was quick. They were very
8
quick.
plays.
And I think the most maddening thing about this, and it was especially prevalent on that last drive in overtime, and the one before that in the fourth quarter. They got no pressure at all the entire game. Legitimately, they had 1 sack. They had 0 sacks, 0 QB hits, and very few pressures. Hassan Reddick had 1 pressure the entire game. He's been an absolute disaster. I ranted about him on Connor's podcast, so I won't do it again here. But he's just been an absolute disaster, and I can't imagine anybody's ruined their value in recent years more than that guy. But to get 0 QB hits over a 4-quarter game is just absolutely bad. And Ulbricht's excuse was, well, Tua is really good at getting rid of the ball quickly. He threw it 48 times. How are you not hitting him a single time? That's insane. And I believe on his touchdown at the end, he held on to the ball for more than 3 seconds. So it was a pretty embarrassing effort by the defense overall. The offense, they got to the red zone 5 straight times to start the game and scored in all of them, but only 2 of them were touchdowns. And I pointed that out, and people got mad at me on Twitter. But the point is, if you don't score touchdowns when you get to the red zone, it's hard to win games when you're not good enough to stop the other team too. So there's just like so many little things that add up to what is a terrible season for a terrible team, and it's depressing and it's annoying because we all thought it was going to be better. You and I were even optimistic. We started off the year trying to be very positive. Like we made it a point to be positive this season, and they've made it impossible. To be fair, Janae Coakley was also on there, and Janae's an actual friend of mine. So
yeah, Taylor just commented, wait, Zack is seeing other podcasts.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Janae from SNY.
Did you say Janae is actually a friend of yours?
Yeah, she's an actual friend, whereas Connor is just
he's,
as they say in Parks and Rec, Connor is a work proximity associate, is what I would call him. But yeah, so they're end rant. Terrible season, terrible drive, terrible fourth quarter. Team is terrible. Season can't end soon enough. Let's start the coaching search, the GM search, which is kind of exciting to a degree because I'm very curious to see who they can hire. And there's some interesting coaching candidates, and maybe Bill Belichick's going to UNC, so that removes
That's
one.
Insane
which I thought he was a lock to be the Giants coach, frankly. So, and it seemed it's like legit. Like from what I hear, it's like a legit thing to the point where he might legitimately go there, which is just wild.
I just don't understand why. Like I thought the whole point of continuing to coach was to get 14 wins and pass.
Maybe
I didn't think there was any other reason.
He's trying to prove a point that he doesn't only want that. I don't know. Like he's pretty old. Like it's not like he has a lot of years to coach in college and go to the NFL. So
it's also, I know it would be kind of a slam.
I don't know. Maybe this is gonna be
to go from Mac Brown to Bill Belichick is like, I mean, I'm not trying to be ageist or anything, but like,
yeah,
it's a lot of years.
I will say, and this is a bad joke, but it's the end later in the pod. So he is dating somebody who's like 23 years old. So maybe he found the fountain of youth and he wants to be on a college campus and relive that part of his life. I don't know.
There you go. All right. Well, this has been fun. The new location. Taylor asked if I'm at the mall. If you missed the beginning, no, we're at the Anatole Resort in Dallas, Texas. A massive hotel. The winter meetings. There's a buzz around here, though. Hopefully, you're Mets fans. Juan Soto is coming to Queens. All right, what are we doing later in the week? We're not sure.
We'll figure that out. We'll talk about it because it's getting a little busy right now because I'm working on a couple things, and you're traveling a lot. But yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's a rough week.
We're gonna try to do one, but we'll see.
Yeah, jet fatigue setting in. But thank you for everybody who did tune in. I know it's hard this time of the season, but we appreciate you, everybody that's watching the stream or listening, and we will talk to everybody soon on the Flight Plan Podcast.